Stay connected. Make sure you hit the subscribe button.
Hi, my name is Kay Gang. I'm a resident of Cortland County. I grew up here. I actually went to kindergarten at Parker School, but I'm not here to talk about Parker today. So that was an interesting conversation. I want to say that I went to the Cortland Junior High School, during a time when there wasn't much acceptance for LGBT people in this community. I was part of helping to start a gay-straight alliance at my high school, and I have been an ally to the LGBT community. I'm part of the community. Anyone that knows me knows that I've always stood up on the side of justice, on the side for truth, and also, of course, anything that has to do with protecting children and keeping them safe. That's part of why I started working at the Cortland LGBT Center back in 2012. So when I worked there, we were in a completely different environment than the one that we're currently in. We were introducing the language of gender identity into the Cortland Junior High School, into the Homer High School, surrounding area high schools, the college, meeting up with local businesses. You may have gotten a cultural sensitivity training from the Cortland LGBT Center. I used to give those. I also was responsible for putting the Q on the end of the LGBTQ Center as it exists now. It used to just be LGBT Center. So I preface all this, what I'm about to say, because I care very much about protecting vulnerable people from discrimination. And that includes children, and it also includes women and girls who are losing our sex-based rights currently, right now. Not just here in Cortland, all of New York State, all of the United States, in not just the Western world, but 191 countries all around the world. That is happening, and that is part of why I'm here today. The Cortland Common Council approved a Pride Festival to be held by the Cortland LGBT Center back, I believe it was in April, and I went through the minutes of all of the council meetings, and I couldn't find anywhere where it was said that there was going to be an all-ages, family-friendly drag show. And I didn't see that anywhere, and I couldn't find any answers about who actually approved for that event to occur. So it's to my understanding at this point that it was an unpermitted event. The festival itself, they asked to have permits, to have vendors, to have booths, to have games, to have people in the park. There was never any mention of an all-ages drag show. Now, drag is an adult sexual form of entertainment. It always has been. Anything to the contrary of that is very, very new. I have a lot of things to say, and I know that you all have a long meeting. But I want to be clear about what's going on here with the drag, because drag is absolutely sexual. I have photographs here with me from a drag performance that was put on in 2012 when I worked at the Cortland LGBT Center. It's at the SUNY Cortland. It was directed for adults because it's sexual. It's very clear. These are sexual materials. Drag is for adults. Now, when we invite strangers who are not qualified in early childhood development to our town square to talk to children about consent, that's raising a lot of issues. You're going to have people in the community that are not okay with that. So I want to say that we don't consent, and this is not a left or a right issue. I'm not a left or a right person. Anybody that knows me knows that, and this far supersedes American bipartisan politics. This is a global issue, and it's about the sex-based rights of women and girls, and it's about child safeguarding. So it's not a left-right issue. All people who are concerned about the health, safety, and well-being of current and future generations have a vested interest in this conversation. Adult taxpayers in Cortland County do not consent to publicly funded institutions, organizations, and parks being used to promote and host a so-called family-friendly and therefore all-ages drag show. Our consent was neither asked for nor granted. We do not consent to this use of public funds and spaces being used to promote a sexualized form of adult entertainment featuring adult performers whose social media pages proudly label themselves as burlesque dancers and display nudity and lewdness that is 100% not appropriate for children. So the Common Council did not consent for an all-ages drag show in the Courthouse Park, our public park, our town square. It was used non-consensually. Children are not capable of consent. This is literally why age of consent laws exist. Adult entertainers with zero experience or qualification in early childhood development teaching children and adults that children are capable of giving enthusiastic and informed consent is not only dangerous, but a redefinition of the term consent itself. I want you to all know what happened at the park. I stood as a lone woman with a sign, peacefully and lawfully, holding up a sign, talking about stop female erasure, and saying that drag is sexist, and it is. Now, I have every right to stand there and hold my sign in the public square. A lone woman, peacefully, lawfully, holding up my sign to register my voice of non-consent to an event where my tax dollars are being used to promote sexual themes to children. I was approached by 4 or 5 different women. They had rainbow and trans flags on the ends of sticks that were handed out to them by the Cortland LGBTQ Center, probably paid for by the New York State Department of Health. The women began dancing around me in a circle and invading my personal space. One woman repeatedly used her rear end and thighs to purposefully bump into me while the others jabbed their sticks at me saying, "I'm not touching you, I'm not touching you," despite the fact that yes, indeed, they were touching me. A police officer then put her hand on me, pushing me backwards 3 times, despite the fact that I was standing with 2 feet firmly on the ground and both hands up in the air doing absolutely nothing to anyone, fully within my rights in a public space. The women who harassed and non-consensually touched me with their bodies were not pushed by the police officer. I was repeatedly threatened for arrest simply for saying that I had not done anything wrong. While I was being non-consensually touched by Pride attendees and an officer, the drag queens began teaching children about consent, explaining that no one can touch you unless you offer enthusiastic consent. The irony of men who impersonate women teaching children about consent at an unpermitted event as a lone woman who is saying no is non-consensually bumped, pushed, and poked should be noted by everyone. I then approached another police officer asking if it was family friendly for event attendees to non-consensually touch me, and if the best response was for an officer to push me when I was not the source of the altercation. The officer asked me if that wasn't what I came for, to get roasted. I replied, no, I came here to stand up for what is right. Not only is consent not being taught, children are being taught that a woman who says no to the loss of female sex-based rights and to the grooming of children should be met with physical violence, silenced, and removed from public space. Women have a right to exist and voice our concerns in public. The right of people of all ages, races, nationalities, religious and political backgrounds to speak freely in the public square must be preserved. We should be able to stand up and voice concerns about how public funds and institutions are being used to indoctrinate children and expose them to age-inappropriate themes of adult entertainment and gender identity ideology. A woman standing up in public to say, I am a woman and I do not consent, should not be subject to harassment, intimidation, and violence. And yet that is what we see happening, and that is what I personally experienced at the Courthouse Park during an unpermitted, all-ages, family-friendly drag show. The term TERF was used against me by several attendees to the event and volunteers with the Cortland LGBTQ Center. Yes, the term TERF is a misogynistic slur. The term TERF is a misogynistic slur that typically accompanies threats or acts of violence against women who do not believe that men should be allowed to access female sex spaces. And if you don't believe that, turfisaslur.com. And I'm standing here in front of you telling you that the term TERF has been used at me while violence has been perpetrated against me.
Ms. Shan, can you address the council, please?
Yes, I can. Thank you. Yes, I can. So this use of violence, harassment, intimidation to shut down the free speech of people who speak on this issue, especially women, is escalating all around the world. And that should give concern to people from all demographics, not just women and not just mothers. These photos that I have are from 10 years ago in 2013 at the Cortland LGBTQ Center's Facebook page. They show a drag performance where the tucked genitalia of men impersonating women can be prominently seen. The photos of the drag show are represented on the Cortland LGBTQ Center Facebook page, and they are absolutely neither family-friendly nor appropriate for all ages. Grooming is when people use charm to desensitize and normalize and expose to an increasing level of escalating boundary violations over time. So cartoonish drag queens imitating Sesame Street characters and singing the ABCs to children in between costume changes at our Cortland Free Public Library, conversations about consent, rainbows, glitter, and rainbow-colored condoms are all examples of grooming. These behaviors, offering these things, talking about these things to children in public spaces, these behaviors normalize and desensitize children to adult sexuality. When children are exposed to adult sexual activities, this interrupts their natural, innocent development. Chad Felix Green is a drag queen and author of Surviving Gender, My Journey Through Gender Dysphoria. He says, "I love drag. I have done drag. Many of my favorite celebrities are drag queens. But by its very nature, drag is already unsuitable for children, based on the culture it flourished in and the way the art form communicates to its audience. It barely translates outside of the LGBTQ cultural bubble. The more you remove these elements, the less it resembles drag, and the more it looks like advocacy for something kids just shouldn't be exposed to. You take away the cursing, the sexual innuendo, the revealing clothes, the provocative dress, and all you are left with is a man, an adult man in a dress, mocking women and trying to convince children he is an ambassador for an entire community." So I want to say, the LGBTQ Center might have the name LGBTQ in it, but they do not represent the LGBT community in Cortland. They do not represent all of the places, and they certainly do not represent mine. As a former employee at the Cortland LGBTQ Center, I am mortified that this is being allowed in our community. It would not have been permitted when I worked there. I wouldn't have gone for it, and I don't think any of the women who worked there would have gone for it. Our public funds should not be used for this, and I would like to know who approved this. And since the Common Council didn't approve it, what is the normal procedure or typical protocol when the proper permits and approval are not obtained for an event that uses our public parks? When did the Common Council know that a drag show was being marketed as all ages, as family friendly, with the Cortland Free Library logo on it? When did the Common Council find out? Why did the Common Council not stop this? And will the Common Council promise our community that we won't have to come here again or protest in front of the library or in our public parks to say, no, children should not be exposed to sexual themes? I would like to hear a comment from the Common Council. I know this isn't a back and forth, but eventually I think these answers need to be given to us, because community members are just finding out that this even happened. And I would also like to say many, many community members from all different demographics have reached out to me personally and privately and expressed their fear to speak on this issue. We have so many people in this community who are terrified to say boo about any of this because they don't want to be accused of being bigots, of being homophobes, and I've been accused of all of that, which isn't true. For anyone who knows me and who grew up with me will know that that's not true. But I want you all to know that our community members are scared to voice these concerns to you, to each other, to other people in the community. They're scared to talk about it.
All right, well, thank you. Thank you for that. All right, thank you. Anybody else for privilege of the floor that's not signed up?
I got one. Hello, Luke Stevenson again. I'll try to keep my response to under 3 minutes, as is custom. But I just wanted to highlight a few things in lieu of that comment. I think there was a false equivalence broached between a 10-year-old explicitly adults-only drag show and a show that was performed this past week that was exclusively aimed and articulated for families, that had things like Disney show tunes sung, that had discussion about consent and how consent should work, which, if you don't know how consent works, that is a clear inroad to things like grooming, to predatory behavior, and to people being taken advantage of. I would also like to highlight the disparity between a woman being allowed to stand and protest, saying that her free speech was violated, while also trying to stymie the free speech of drag queens and the community at the LGBTQ Center, who were performing and discussing and performing and entertaining for people. There were no actual photos or discussions about the show last week itself. If any of you were there, you would have seen that it was not a show that was sexualized. It was not a show that had any provocative themes to it. The closest to a provocative theme was the song from Hercules, the Disney movie. I find it frustrating that there is the possibility of inciting fear to a community that is about performative gender and talking about how people can express themselves in different ways, while also trying to shut down any future events that, while trying to shut down any future events that could be perceived as problematic in a sexualized context, when there were police there that did not raise any issues about sexualization of children. There were not any police reports, to my understanding, or that were mentioned about grooming, about predatory behavior around kids. And honestly, everybody who I saw at the event, who I was a booth member there, was lovely. Everybody was respectful and kind, and there weren't any that I saw positions to put people in that would cause jeopardy or danger.
I was pushed, poked, and shoved.
And I'm sorry for that.
Thank you.
So that's danger. That's jeopardizing people's safety.
I'm sorry.
Thank you.
I'm sorry
Please
that
don't talk to me
I'm sorry
anymore.
that the police weren't able to resolve that.
Can we please refrain from that? So with that said, I'll close the public comments and I can get into the debate.
Mayor, can I just have just 1 minute? That's it.
Is it going to be a debate or is it going to be a different topic?
It's going to be a comment about this topic, and it'll be less than 1 minute.
Okay.
Thank you.
Scott Heath. I'm going to keep it very simple. I'm just going to read what I posted on Facebook, just simply citing the article from the Cortland Standard. Cortland, there is nothing family-friendly about perversion. Do not be deceived. This is how it all starts. Believe me, or go check out the New York City Pride events yourself or anywhere. Perversion never breeds wholesomeness. Sin never leads to righteous living. What a pernicious lie from the media, naming it as family-friendly. I'll leave it at that.
Okay, thank you.
Just one comment.
Okay. What should you identify yourself?
Hi. You may recognize me as the woman that stood outside the library. I was photographed holding my child in protest of the Cortland Library. My name is Sydney Dawson. I'm a homeschooling mother that was extremely concerned with the library's involvement with this event. I did interview the director myself before a bunch of community members started reaching out to her, and she did have more involvement than the paper is leading to believe in the actual
actually planning the event. She did specifically, if you notice, plan all of her involvement around the drag show so that people could attend it. And I do have her on recording stating that she believed family drag shows can be family friendly. I believe that your community members here are being lied to and manipulated, and I think you guys should strongly look at that. The library tax was just voted on and increased for 3 municipalities in this area from 2% to 8%. That is a large portion of your tax money that is going to indoctrinating children. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay.
I'm sorry.
It's not going to be a debate, right?
No,
It's
it's
a
not
comment
gonna be a
directed to us, please. Thank you.
So, I just want to say,
What's your name?
my name is Lawrence Wild. I have been I've been here at Cortland for about 4 years now. I started here as a student, and I've pretty much changed my life plans because I love this place and I want to stay. If a cisgender woman
A who?
dressed up,
Can you define that?
Please, Ms. Yang, can you let him have this speak?
Well, we don't know what that word means. We should be given an explanation.
Please let him speak.
a cisgender woman is somebody who was assigned woman at birth and still identifies as a woman. If a cis woman wore a dress and put on makeup and read to children, would we call that sexual? No, we usually call them a mother or kindergarten teacher if they were teaching small children the alphabet. As a transgender man who has lived in Cortland and found a family here through the LGBTQ center and through our school, stuff like drag, it is a way of letting people be themselves. Dressing as Sesame Street characters is not harming children. Frankly, knowing that there were other ways to be yourself and seeing radical acceptance would have been wonderful for me as a child. And again, as somebody who is trans, who is queer, I am hurt to hear somebody say LGB community because the T is there too. I feel that the Pride was so important, and to have it to be around for the first Cortland Pride, I'm very pleased, and I'm glad there was a drag show. I got to meet some of the drag queens there. They were lovely people, and I know a lot of children who had quite a good time, and I don't think any of them were groomed or terrorized by drag queens. That's all.
Okay, thank you very much. That's it. What's that? Okay, now we're going to move on. Thank you for the finance report. City budget to date is the first one.
Stay connected. Make sure you hit the subscribe button.